The Sunday Times is the South Africa's biggest Sunday newspaper. Established in 1906, the Sunday Times is distributed all over South Africa and in neighbouring countries such as Lesotho, Botswana, and Swaziland. History. The Sunday Times was first published on 4 February 1906 as a weekly sister publication of the Rand Daily Mail, which at the time was standing alone against its rival. Transvaal leader, founding editor George Herbert Kingswell introduced the slogan, "A paper for the people." It was later changed to "The paper for the people," a slogan that is still in use today. For the first edition of the paper, published on 4 February 1906, 11,600 copies were printed and soon sold out, forcing the paper to print an additional 5,000 copies. By November 1909, the paper sales had risen to 35,000. In 1992, the former columnist Yanni Allen sued the British broadcaster Channel 4 for libel over affair allegations involving her and Eugene Terreblanche. Allen had interviewed the AWB leader for the Sunday Times. Allen had already settled out of court with the London Evening Standard and Options magazine over similar allegations. The then news editor of the newspaper, the late Marlene Berger, and newspaper astrologer Linda Shaw testified against Allen. Prior to the libel suit, Allen had published articles for the newspaper dismissing the affair allegations. Allen also allowed the newspaper to publish answer phone messages left by Terreblanche, as well as her threats of taking legal action against Terreblanche for nuisance contact. Allen lost the case. The judge ruled that she had not been defamed but did not conclude whether or not an affair had taken place. The case became notorious for violence and a dirty tricks campaign. Publications such as the Financial Mail and Allen herself speculated that the defense witnesses were paid by the de Klerk regime in an attempt to destabilize the far right in South Africa. Shaw recounted her editor, Ken Owen's reaction to the case. "When I came back from London, Owen stood in the middle of the newsroom and said, 'You have single-handedly destroyed the reputation of every journalist in the country and we have become the laughing stock.'" Quote, on 13 November 2005, the Sunday Times broke the story that the African National Congress (ANC) leader Jacob Zuma was being investigated on rape charges. It was reported that Zuma considered legal action against the publication, although it later emerged that an investigation was in fact underway. On 6 December 2005, official rape charges were filed against Zuma. He would later be acquitted of rape. On 5 November 2007, it was reported that a consortium containing some senior government figures had launched a bid to purchase 100% of Avusa, previously Joncom, the company that owned the Sunday Times. In March 2007, Zuma sued the paper for R6 million over 2 columns by popular columnist David Bullard. The 2 columns, "Stupidity: A Mitigating Circumstance for Zuma," published on 16 April 2006, and "Visit the Zuma website to see what was meant," 7 May 2006, were cited by Zuma as defamatory and an impairment of his dignity. Although David Bullard was found to be operating within the ethical bounds of the Sunday Times regarding the 2 columns, he would later fall out of favor with editor Mondli Makanya. On 10 April 2008, Bullard was fired from the Sunday Times after the publication of a column on 6 April 2008. "Uncolonized Africa Wouldn't Know What It Was Missing" received stern protest from several political parties. The editor apologized for the column, saying, "By publishing him, Bullard, we were complicit in disseminating his Stone Age philosophies." In September 2008, the Sunday Times was again vigorously attacked for publishing a highly controversial piece. this time in the form of a cartoon by critically acclaimed cartoonist Jonathan Shapiro. Zapiro. The cartoon depicted Jacob Zuma getting ready to rape the justice system while being assisted by the leaders of various ANC and political factions and parties. Zapiro denied any ambiguity between Jacob Zuma's depiction as a rapist in the cartoon and his earlier rape trial. The Sunday Times and its editor were slated by various ANC officials. A joint press release by the ANC, the South African Communist Party and the ANC Youth League lambasted the Sunday Times editor, describing him as a dictator, and called for his replacement. We can only hope that the newspaper will find a suitable leadership other than the ranting dictator who finds joy in manipulating the truth. Quote, by Theophilus Moke-Goatleng from Boston Media House. Editors. 1906 to 1909. Founding editor George Herbert Kingswell launched the Sunday Times and ran Daily Mail owner Sir A. Bailey. Kingswell was initially offered the job as ran Daily Mail, the Fourth Estate, Joel Mervis, but instead looked to create a weekly paper. 1909 1910. Lewis Rose MacLeod named editor. 1910 to 1942. Joseph Langley Levy, a drama critic and leading cultural figure in Johannesburg, was born in Liverpool, England on 25 May 1887. He was editor of the Sunday Times for 32 years, during which circulation rose from 35,000 to 150,000, penetrating every province and reaching towns and villages scattered over an area of almost 500,000 square miles. He died in Johannesburg on the 11th of May 1945. 1942 to 1947. E. B. Chuck Dawson, remembered as the first of the paper's shirt-sleeves editors, a journalist who hated ostentation in either people or prose. At the time of his death in 1957, he was also remembered as a hero of Delville Wood who saved a comrade's life during the epic battle in World War I. 1947 to 1958. N. A. G. Cayley named editor. 1959 to 1975. Joel Mervis has been credited as transforming the Sunday Times into the most widely read and powerful weekly in South Africa during his tenure as editor. 1975 to 1990. Albert Tertius Mybra, the 26th of December 1936 to 2 December 1990, was a South African journalist and editor, best known as editor of the Sunday Times. Mybra resigned as editor of the Sunday Times in September 1990 after 15 years. His next role was to be as ambassador to Washington and London. 4 days later, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer and died at home in December of the same year. 1991 to 1996. Ken Owen named editor. 1996 to 1998. Brian Pottinger was also the deputy chair of the South African National Editors Forum during this time. He became the managing director of Times Newspapers Limited and in 2000 would be appointed at publisher of the Sunday Times. From 2003 to 2007, he was the chief executive officer of the Africa division for John H. Communications Limited. 1998 to 2000. Mike Robertson was the editor and associate publisher for the Sunday Times during this period. He used to be the deputy editor, chief assistant editor, assistant editor and political correspondent for the newspaper. He is the publisher of the Sunday Times and managing director of Times Media Group's media operations. 2002-2003. Mathatha Tsedu was the deputy editor of the Sunday Independent, the deputy editor of the Star, then the deputy chief executive of the SABC News, before becoming editor of the Sunday Times in 2002. In 2003 he was dismissed as editor of the Sunday Times. In 2014, the SA National Editors Forum announced Mathatha Tsedu would serve as its executive director. 2004 to 2010. Mondli Makanya was appointed as editor of Sunday Times, a political writer and editor. He became the Mail and Guardian editor in 2002 before joining the Sunday Times in 2004. In 2010, Makanya was promoted to editor-in-chief of Ivusa media newspapers, including The Times and Swaziland. Sunday World. 2010 to 2013. Ray Hartley was the founding editor of daily newspaper The Times in 2007, before taking over the reins as editor of the Sunday Times in 2010 after Makanya left. During Hartley's tenure as editor, Sunday Times journalists won virtually all the awards on offer, including the prestigious Standard Bank Sivikil and Tako Kwepa Awards for investigative journalism. He is currently editor-at-large for the Times Media Group and launched the Rand Daily Mail website in 2014. 2013 to 2015. Phyllis Oppelt became the first female editor of the Sunday Times. Oppelt was the editor of the Daily Dispatch from 2005 to 2008, and as editor of Business Times from 2008 to 2010. In 2010, she was appointed editor of The Times, which had entered the market in June 2007 under Hartley's editorship. 2016 to present. Bongani Sikako is the former editor of the award-winning Daily Dispatch, Saturday Dispatch and Dispatch Live. He has been with the Daily Dispatch since November 2004, having held many positions at the newspaper: news editor, managing editor, and deputy editor. Prior to his appointment as editor in June 2013, he holds an MA in International Journalism from City University Londo, United Kingdom. Bibliography: Allen, Yanni. 1980s. Face value: Longstreet. ISBN 0-620-07013-7. Collection of Giustiani columns originally published in the Sunday Times. Bullard, David. 2002. Out to Lunch. Jonathan Ball publishes. First edition of Out to Lunch columns originally published in the Sunday Times. Bullard, David. 2005. Out to Lunch again. Jonathan Ball publishes. Second edition of Out to Lunch columns originally published in the Sunday Times. Bullard, David. 2007. Screw It, Let's to Lunch. Jonathan Ball publishes. Third edition of Out to Lunch columns originally published in the Sunday Times. Dreyer, Nadine. 2006. A Century of Sundays. 100 Years of Breaking News in the Sunday Times. 1906 to 2006. Zebra. Centenary Special Edition Compilation. Mervis, Joel. 1989. The Fourth Estate. A Newspaper Story. Jonathan Ball publishes. Distribution areas. Distribution figures. Readership figures. See also. List of newspapers in South Africa. The Fourth Estate. Joel Mervis. 1989. A Century of Sundays. 100 Years of Breaking News in the Sunday Times. 1906 to 2006. Sunday Times website. SAARF website.